So welcome to thailandtoday.co on Facebook Live today. We have a guest on the technology that we would like to introduce, Khun Benjamin Henshall. Khun Benjamin is the general manager of Red Hat. Red Hat is an open source software company. At the moment, I understand that Khun Ben is based in living. So you are staying in Sydney, Australia, right?
Yeah, temporarily at the moment.
So basically you are based in Singapore.
Correct.
Our focus today is on the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the financial services sector, the banks, the insurance, and other related services. So first of all, I would like to welcome Khun Ben to our program on thailandtoday.co. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. It's really, really a pleasure to be here. Nice to see you.
So Khun Ben, first, just go ahead with your observation how this COVID-19 pandemic impact the financial services industry, please.
Yeah, look, Red Hat's seeing two major trends that are going on with the COVID-19 situation right now in financial services. And that is that from a business perspective, we're seeing that the banks are having and will face a reasonably tough situation where businesses where they have lent money to are going to struggle to try and recoup some of that money with the interest loans that they have lent out. They've obviously put a price and a risk around that, and with businesses having challenges around the fact that they have been curtailed or shut down for a period of time, obviously means that they're struggling to be able to repay those loans. But with that said, that's more, I think, going to be a more an interim issue with which banks, have stress tests that they do. But from a technological perspective, Red Hat is seeing that what COVID-19 is really bringing to the fore and really, I guess, sharpening the acuteness of the need for having an outstanding digital experience in banking and also with insurance, with customers and employees. The fact that we're all sitting at home, we have highly restricted movements, and we're doing this interview both at each other's homes or a different location than would otherwise be our work office, is demonstrative of the fact that the need for an outstanding digital experience in financial services is even more prevalent and will need to be, a high priority and a continued priority for financial institutions. And Red Hat's perspective on this is we've been helping banks and financial institutions, modernize their IT systems to become digital natives for the past 20 years or so. And we're just seeing that COVID-19 is making this even more acute as a priority for them to become digital native financial institutions.
So Khun Ben, you talk about customer experience. I have to say that I myself have two mobile phones with 4 banks, Thai banks accounts, 2 on this one, another 2 on this one, Bangkok Bank, K Bank here, and some commercial bank here, and another bank. So basically, I hardly go to the banks. I move my money around my gadgets. So how the pandemic further accelerate the adoption of, banking from home service, let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, to your point, you've got 4 bank accounts, or you've got 4 banking providers, right? You're able to do that without actually physically having to go into the branch, and this is part of this idea of know your customer, or KYC as it's the acronym for it. You can do things without having to physically be there to exchange money or sign something, because your identity is baked into those mobile applications. And we've for instance, in Thailand, have seen just the of customers or existing customers download or uptake, CM commercial banks or Kasikorn banks, online banking account services has jumped by 30,000 and 10,000 respectively. just since this COVID-19 issue has really come to the fore in Thailand. So that idea that you can do your banking through that mobile system, you don't have to leave, it's pervasive and it's part of your lifestyle, is demonstrative of just the relationship and the interactions that banks have with their customers. And I would also say their employees, because a whole lot of employees are having to work from home as well. That mandates the need for having a digital native first class experience. And, our experience across ASEAN and globally is that if you don't continually have an elegant, frictionless, easy banking experience with the bank or banking service providers that you have, and they actually interact with each other, then that's a real problem for financial institutions. And that's very much a problem area that Red Hat is very focused on helping banks address.
And my next question is how financial service banks or insurance are being affected by the rise of e-commerce and all the home delivery services, or the so-called super applications. So how things are being played out for financial service?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's really, really fascinating to watch. IDC have got some research, McKinsey and others have got research on this, where there's this blending and convergence and the barriers or boundaries of what a bank traditionally or currently does is being disassembled and reassembled through, for instance, these ideas of super apps. If you think of a super app in a way, it's like having a mega store, a department store where you walk in and you can go to lots of different, levels or sections within that department store and go and buy all your stuff through that single department store. Well, a super app is similarly doing that. And the need for a banking service to become a natural, frictionless experience through that is a 101 mandatory requirement. So you don't want to have to move out of your Grab app or your Alibaba app or your Tencent app or your WhatsApp and then go to your banking system. You just want to, or your Facebook system, you want to have that, or Amazon, you want to have that just pervaded and naturally part of your experience, say through Amazon or through Grab. You don't want to have to jump out into different systems. And that's where the banks are really, spending quite a bit of time, and some are doing it better than others, in thinking about mapping the customer journey through either these super apps or the different social or digital platforms that, you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis, so that it's frictionless, it's secure, it's seamless, and it's just a natural extension of how you interact and engage with your financial institution with whatever app or whatever service you're using at the time.
So in your opinion, what banking and related financial services will be like in the wake of this COVID-19 pandemic? I mean, maybe later this year or next year?
I think it would be certainly arrogant of us to have any high, strong predictions about what they will or won't be doing. What we certainly can suggest with a high degree of confidence is what I was alluding to at the beginning of our discussion, is that banks will, we think, continue to really double down and focus on transforming how they do digital banking in a high-class, native, frictionless, first-class citizen experience way. And that's fundamentally driven by, three main pillars, and that is modernizing IT infrastructure, modernizing the bank's applications, both front, middle, and back office, and then modernizing and transforming the way they actually, what we call, master the art of software development, design, test, and delivery, or continuous delivery. And this is the beautiful, gorgeous thing that we see in places like Thailand and ASEAN more broadly, is the the fact that you know, in ASEAN, there's this huge penetration rate of mobility, like really big penetration rate. Come along 5G and already, you know, a pretty decent telco network infrastructure, and 5G is just going to really help accelerate the digitization of financial services. There's this beautiful opportunity of capturing new markets, providing new services. There's a growing level of wage, you know, until COVID-19 came along. There's a huge amount of entrepreneurship. There's rich, sophisticated manufacturing that's going on, and agriculture that's going on, for instance, in Thailand. So there's the need for financial services is growing, but the ability to make it profitable, digitally outstanding, you know, is a real focus area that we're certainly seeing post-COVID or post-major COVID-19, where the banks are really going to, you know, continue to focus on and double down on transforming.
So you're talking about traditional or now more digital banking services using the technology. Is there any big difference between retail banking, consumer banking, with commercial banking in the sense of the, you know, trade financing, enterprise banking, or the wholesale banking, in other words?
Yeah, not like fundamentally they're doing some similar things, but at different scale. But ultimately, there's not a huge amount of difference from a digital or digitization aspect. So the way Red Hat thinks about, you know, banking with those two areas of, let's call it commercial or institutional banking and then retail banking, is you're trying to acquire money, then you're putting a price and risk around it, and then you're packaging it up and then onboarding it to somebody else to go and buy that product and have that experience. And the need to make that digitally native and outstanding and frictionless, and instead of forcing a customer or an employee through a clunky internal banking process to capture that money, price it, risk it, and then package it up and then, you know, distribute it or sell it. Banks' internal systems are notoriously known for being quite clunky and not well integrated. So that's where we have that frustration with sometimes when we deal with a financial institution or an employee has trouble servicing a customer because they can't get a resolution to it because the banking process and the banking systems are not well integrated. So we see certainly that institutional and corporate banking and retail banking are both heavily focused on how to become a digital native in the banking processes that they do. One has low margin, huge amounts of scale. The other has high margin and low scale, but a high degree of more sophistication in the way that they're pricing and lending out that money and packaging it up. So, you know, we fundamentally don't see a major difference in the technical aspects, but obviously there's a difference in the use cases that they have or the processes that they're doing for each of those different lines of business.
So you think the corporate or institutional banking side is lagging behind the consumer or the retail side, or it's about the same pacing?
From a customer experience, yes, they are. The institutional side is generally less advanced than the retail or consumer side because you know, just there is a different nuance in the way that an institutional bank or corporate bank deals with its end users and its employees versus on the retail side. They are quite different workflows and customer experience processes that are there. So retail's, you know, if you don't have a great retail experience online, or at least a 101 decent experience, you know, that's a real major problem. Whereas it's not as much of a problem in the institutional side, but it's certainly coming. Because when we think about trade finance, we think about the flow of money and the pricing of it and the idea of real-time interbank transfer payments and trade finance and treasury. You know, you've got to have a pretty fast, well-adjusted, highly integratable, open, you know, technical competency and capability in your systems to be able to, you know, basically transfer and move money around, obviously at greater volumes.
Then what about non-banks moving into financials and banking services? In Thailand, we have seen Ascent at the regional level. We have seen Grab, Get. At the bigger level, you have Facebook, Amazon, etc. Non-banks are moving into financial services. From your observation, what is the dominant approach and how that affects the competition from the more traditional banking sector?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because, and I think, you know, for your audience and your listeners on this, banks in a way have had a reasonably secure market that was largely driven by this idea of security, compliance, and some degree of convenience. And, you know, from where I've come from in Australia, you know, the idea that banks were your friend was, you know, not really there, but they were a necessary part of, you know, life's day-to-day operations. Now what's happened, particularly with the rise of the fintechs, is they have relentlessly focused on customer experience and using cutting-edge technologies from, you know, people like Red Hat to do that, like PayPal, for instance. So they have relentlessly focused on how to have a great digital experience, which has then forced the banks, or really told the banks, hey guys, you're on notice, you really need to step up because I'm starting to take market share from you. And so there is this sort of contention that's going on between these, you know, what you would say digital natives and then the more traditional banks. But what we see in ASEAN, and I think this is where, you know, Ascend Money is a great reference for us that's used, you know, considerably large amounts of Red Hat's technology and its practices to you know, fulfill its things like an e-wallet, is the integration between, say, Ascend Money into different financial institutions. Similarly with Grab and with Ali and others, you know, and Kasicom Bank's another great sort of example of where they're building that sort of lifestyle app, if you will, that's providing interesting insights for the user, the consumer, or the customer, about how they're spending their money and integrating that into other, you know, Thai services. So it's not either digital natives or traditional, it's a blend, and it's a fascinating, rich situation going on right now where, as I say, mapping a customer journey and how customers interact with financial services is becoming very, very blended and fuzzy because the traditional boundaries are being broken down, driven by technology, by software, by APIs, by mastering the art of software integration, you know, which is obviously an area that Red Hat addresses head on.
So you're saying non-banks and traditional banks, they're going digital in a big way and the customer is the center. So they are working together, or they collaborating, or they are competing against
Yeah, I mean, it's a
mixture of that.
Yeah, we call it co-opetition and we call it frenemies.
Friend and enemy.
Yes, yeah. So, and you know what, just as a side note, that is in some ways entirely Red Hat's philosophy and business model, because with open source software, what we do is we have our competitors contribute software code to open source software projects that we, you know, have been long-standing stalwarts and stewards of, and we work together with them to produce superior software. But we've got our competitors in the same room, you know, helping to facilitate and mature that software through the open source software model. So we're well versed with that idea of frenemies, but together, if you focus on the right things being in banking customer experience or employee experience, you know, then obviously everyone's going to win because you're going to have superior outcomes for, you know, those relevant recipients of your service or product.
So regarding Red Hat, you acquired by IBM recently, right? And first of all, what is the benefits of being part of IBM? And secondly, how Red Hat differentiate your company from the competition, please?
I'm sorry, can you still hear me? No.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. Are you on?
Yeah, nope, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the benefits for customers, let me not so much benefit for Red Hat, but the benefit for customers in the market is that IBM has this amazing history of innovation and a huge customer base in running effectively the most complex and critical workloads in the world. And what IBM can bring to their customers is this amazing, innovative, open source, hybrid cloud software architecture from Red Hat, which is, like infrastructure software plumbing and development tools that are necessary to help accelerate, customers' journey towards the cloud. And that's where, if you combine Red Hat and IBM together, that's a really, really powerful proposition for customers. But what I would say as well is that IBM's done a very, very clever thing, and they have maintained the integrity and independence of Red Hat from IBM. So it's not called a merger and acquisition. It's called, they've acquired Red Hat, but it's called a synergy. And they've kept Red Hat very significantly independent from IBM. So we have our own business cards, our own offices, our own back office team, our own product strategy. We are still operating independently, but we have a synergy with IBM to help IBM's customers obviously leverage and take advantage of what Red Hat's architecture and approach is. And we've also maintained from a Red Hat perspective that beautiful, rich ecosystem and independence that Red Hat had when we were standalone with our cloud providers and independent software vendors and hardware vendors and partners and what have you.
And the second question is how Red Hat differentiate from the competition, please.
Yeah, look, no, that's a pretty easy question, but it's it's a great question. Yeah. So if you think about, well, let me take it this way. The way Red Hat thinks about our customers' problems stems from the need to become a digital native and master software. Now, software is notoriously difficult and hard because ultimately, it's an engineering design practice. And we all know when we've had a bad experience with software, it's frustrating, or it hasn't worked, or it's not interoperable. And what Red Hat has done is it's mastered the principle of open source software development, which is about masses of contributions to software projects. The best idea rises to the top. And out of that, then we make an open source enterprise ready software system that customers and banks, for instance, can go and use. Now, in a proprietary or closed development model, you can't compete with open source because open source has essentially a 10 or 20 or 100x times of people innovating on top of idea upon ideas, which is code upon code. Whereas in a proprietary or closed development model, you have a limited set of resources. So Red Hat takes that beautiful magic of engineering and open source, wraps it up as an enterprise that they can focus on deploying an outstanding digital experience rather than putting in proprietary or expensive software architectures, which, sometimes work, but they also cost a lot, but are not interoperable, not flexible, not open, not standards-based. And that's a constraint on organizations' ability to, deliver on their digital transformation strategies.
Okay. So Ben, you are responsible for Southeast Asian markets, including Thailand. What the markets in general, the demand side is like during this time of the pandemic?
Yeah, so what we've seen in the last 2 months, and let's talk more specifically in the last 6 weeks, we've certainly seen that the way we're interacting with the market and with customers has obviously clearly been like what we're doing right now, which is through web. We've got various ways of doing web conferencing and doing customer engagements through online. and using some of our more innovative tools that Red Hat has.
Mm-hmm.
The demand for existing projects or the follow through on existing projects is still there. The requirement for systems to still be in place and to be renewed and maintained is still there. But we have seen some shift in, obviously, the ability for organizations to make decisions about future projects or future initiatives that they had. That has had some level of delay, or the decision-making process has been somewhat hampered because you've got a distribution of people who are now working from home. But overall, there hasn't been a huge shift in the dampening of the demand of IT systems or Red Hat's products and services. But I just want to be very, very sensitive here. Red Hat very much understands and is sympathetic to the fact that businesses are going through a significant shift and challenge right now, as well as governments. And what we collectively at the executive level and at the regional level are very much about focusing on helping customers adjust, walking with them through their changes, and trying to be as flexible and as adaptive with their needs, with how they're using our software, with the projects that they have, and the commercial aspects to these things as we possibly can. Because it's important that our customers are successful, they navigate this very troubling issues right now, but they maintain that their business is sustainable and safe, post-COVID. So we're very much focused on having that level of empathy and partnership with the market.
So I guess you're working from home for how many weeks now, Ben?
That started in mid-February.
I see. So
yeah, so it's been a while.
And in Bangkok, we heard the letters from the government that maybe another month or 4 or 5 additional weeks in Bangkok. Since Bangkok is one of the, Thai government divided into Thailand into 3 zones. You have one zone, no infections at all. Another zone, a relatively small number of infection, and the other zone, including Bangkok, that in other words, the most dangerous, the more infections than the less. But overall, like today, it's only 27 new infections, and the total cases in Thailand 2,000 something. So I guess we supposed to work from home for quite some time from now, maybe until June. And in other countries around the world, the situation is not much different. So working from home is something that going to be at least a short to medium term. And then after that, how you foresee digital technology, helping people working from home at this time, and then the transition into the offices in the
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, Nop. And Red Hat, again, has, by its very, very foundations, through the open source model, has been a highly distributed, work from home or work in isolation, physically that is, since our inception. Because people who contribute open source software do it anywhere around the world. And so we've got a very, very broad set of people that, work either from home or in the office or wherever they are. And it's exquisite to watch. So we've got part of that, our DNA. And the tools that we have that, our customers use are designed for supporting that level of what you would say hybrid working, either physically located in the same space or anywhere in the world. So for instance, a tool like Red Hat OpenShift or Red Hat Ansible or Red Hat Code Ready are tools that allow people to access and build software as a team virtually, but do it through a browser, or they're able to administer and provision infrastructure from their laptop without needing access to the data center physically there. They can do it through what's called an SSH and a VPN, and provision and patch system so they can be anywhere in the world and work in a unified collaborative way, which is exactly what Red Hat's been doing for 20 years with these different sort of tools. Now you just think about, we just think about how this COVID situation is going to and is already transforming how we work, remotely and separately, physically separately. The technologies that, for instance, Red Hat provides and others is really bringing that to the fore of how do we continue to be productive without physically having to be in the same room and work and communicate and have that level of collaboration and transparency, even though we aren't physically there. And, there's tools like that where Government Savings Bank in Thailand and Kasakon and ASEAN, for instance, in Thailand, are already doing some of those things.
Okay, you have anything else to ask before we finish this session?
Yeah, look, I might just quickly wrap up and say, one of the things that I think is possibly really interesting for your audience is when we think about digitization and in financial services and insurance, the thing that's really, I think, powerful in terms of addressing the foundational problems or challenges that they have today is the nature of, again, software design and software architecture. And open source, and I've been at Red Hat now almost 12 and a half years, which is the predominant open source software company. This is foundational, bless you, this is foundational in terms of accelerating organizations' ability to transform their IT architectures. And I think that's really, really exciting. And I just will leave this fun fact for your audience. When I joined Red Hat in 2007, there was about 250,000 open source projects in the world at that time. And Linux and Apache were two major ones, right? Today, there are millions of open source software projects in the world today. You just think about that level of innovation and intellectual property that's available to people. Red Hat taps into that and then makes it safe for enterprises to use. And I just think that that is a fascinating level of innovation and problem solving that is available to markets and to banking and insurance companies. So I just think that's an interesting endpoint.
So that's quite unique way. I think that's a big strength of your company, Red Hat, in terms of being open source and in terms of facilitating innovation. So Ben, I have to say thank you to you, Benjamin Henshall, the General Manager of Red Hat, responsible for Southeast Asian markets, including Thailand. So thank you again and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.